There you are.
There we go. All
I
right.
lost you for a second there.
Yeah. All right. I'm talking to Steve Bryant, who uh, does Athena Voltaire, which is now being published through Action Lab Comics.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, we got 8 issues into the ongoing series, and there were a few delays on the publisher end. So the next arc, I'm not sure if it'll be released as a mini series or um, an OGN, but it's coming later on this year.
And I know that we were just talking before I started recording that we, you know, first met it through the Comic Geek Speak community, and then a couple of years ago, I believe I interviewed for your Undead or Alive Kickstarter.
Oh yeah, yeah. May it rest in peace. Uh,
But so it's been a while since we've, had a chance to catch up. So how are things going? What are you up to? And then we'll get into the current Kickstarter.
oh sure. Um, I went back to school a couple of years ago um, to do grad school because I've been doing uh, corporate graphic design for about the last 7 years and making comics in my downtime. And I really want to be able to facilitate more time doing stuff I enjoy. And I found I enjoy teaching. So I'm finishing up my master's, and then I'll hopefully be able to do more and more teaching and less graphic design work. And hopefully that translates to more comics. So, but the downside with that was we had just launched Athena Voltaire at Action Lab when I went back to school, and they graciously asked me if I would like to license the book to them, which meant they would pay for artists to draw it, and I could still write it. And we thought that would be kind of a nice way to keep the book visible while I was swamped.
Mhm.
So that's kind of what led to having other people draw the book. But yeah, I mean, that school and making comics, those are pretty much the two things that have occupied the majority of my time since we last spoke.
So how, just because it's been a while, how did you get into comics? Do you remember the first one that you read? What hooked you?
Oh, I'm dating myself now. Yeah, I mean, the book that really absolutely hooked me was Avengers number 129. It was the Steve Englehart, Sal Buscema uh, beginning of the whole Kang storyline, um, and that just blew my little 8-year-old mind. It was pretty great. And then the following week, I found Giant Size Avengers number 2 at the same grocery store, and that was Englehart and Cockrum carrying on the same story. And yeah, I mean, that was really the tipping point for me. I had read um, like war comics and Western comics a little bit before then, but it was really Avengers 129 that kind of pulled me into the superhero stuff. And I was I was a Marvel zombie ever, at that age, at 1974, 1975. Um, and then like my comic buying universe expanded. I think it would have been around 75 or 6. Uh, I was getting the Marvel reprints, Marvel's Greatest Comics of the FF, and I was enjoying the Stan and Jack stuff. And I came across Commandy in the same grocery store, and that was a different publisher, it was a different brand, but I followed Jack Kirby. That was my first instance of going, oh my gosh, this is a guy I know of. So yeah, I kind of went over to DC for stuff like that, and then just that opened up the door even more, and it's been a snowball careening down the hill ever since.
Uh, was there one that made you want to say, I want to write comics. I want to do this.
Oh gee, there wasn't like one specific turning point, but yeah, I mean, as a kid, I definitely grew up wanting to draw these things. Um, And I didn't get like confidence in myself writing wise till much later on. But um, yeah, I would just say it was probably a lot of that Bronze Age Marvel stuff and DC stuff that really opened my eyes to what was out there. And then like the next tipping point was in the 80s being, introduced to Dave Stevens' Rocketeer and Steve Rude and Mike Barron on Nexus. Um, those are the two big ones, but I really enjoyed all of the stuff that Chuck Dixon and Stan Watch were doing on Airboy too. So that was another big one. But I think somewhere in the 80s was when I said, I really want to try this, professionally. As a kid, it was always, I wanted to draw and stuff. But it was probably in the 80s that it really clicked in. But I didn't have the guts to work up sequential samples and ended up doing a lot of work in role-playing games and planning on doing comics when I was good enough or when I was ready. And I realized in like 1999, you're never going to feel ready. You might as well just dive in. So I wasted a lot of time waiting around, for that lightning bolt out of the blue.
So let's talk about your current Kickstarter. It's the Catch 1 and 2. It's a 3-issue miniseries.
Yes, yeah, we
Kickstarter. Yeah, rundown and what inspired it.
Well, yeah, we kickstarted issue 1 a year ago, and now we're back with issue 2 and a way for people to catch up to it. And gosh, actually, the first fragment of an idea for this came to me back when I was on the Comic Geek Speak message boards. Gosh, maybe around 2006. Is that about when Marvel's Civil War came out?
Yes, because I had just moved here to Albany, and the big thing was that Captain America was going to die.
Yeah. Well, right around that time, I kind of I was watching a lot of serialized TV and stuff like that, and I want to say Veronica Mars was kind of an influence on it a little bit at that time, but I was also reading a lot of Elmore Leonard because I got inspired by the movies Out of Sight and Jackie Brown being based on Leonard's Rum Punch. So all of these things kind of combined, and I started to look at, again, thinking about how the Marvel Universe worked and how they were doing what they were doing with Civil War, and was thinking about how you would handle a bail bondsman in there. And again, that's right from the Robert Forster character, Max Cherry, in Jackie Brown. And I tend to refer to the movie more than the book just because that was my introduction and that's where I was mentally when I was thinking about this. But around the same time, there was a prose novel that came out by Austin Grossman. His brother, Lev Grossman, wrote a series called The Magicians, which is on Sci-Fi. But Austin Grossman wrote a book called Soon I Will Be Invincible. And it's from the perspective of a supervillain. And the way that the character talks and describes the environment around him and just the matter-of-fact quality of people with superpowers, it all kind of culminated with, the crime fiction I was reading. I'm sure that Kurt Busiek and Brent Anderson's Astro City factored into that because it has a lot of the same qualities. Or even Kirkman and Cory Walker's Invincible. All that stuff has that same kind of quality about the way the universe works. So yeah, all those things kind of mixed into this same blender, a little bit of Gotham Central as well, because there you're following the detectives in the Bat world.
Yep.
And so yeah, just I was kind of seeing all these disparate threads that made sense to me, and I'd seen other people that had kind of danced around the same topics. And you've got bounty hunters in the superpowered world. You've got PIs and uh, defense attorneys and prosecutors. But the bail bonds person, the skip tracer, when somebody jumps bail, that just seemed like kind of a fun hook. And I wanted to play around with like the D-list bad guys. The example I keep using to everybody is, it's not the Green Goblin or the Vulture. It's more like the Hypno Hustler. That's the level of bad guys that Lucy Chase tracks down. And yeah, that's kind of how it all came together. I realized that was a really convoluted backstory. I apologize. So yeah, that's kind of where it came from.
Okay. And so, who are the characters?
Oh,
You
sure, sure.
mentioned Lucy.
Yeah, yeah. The lead character is Lucy Chase. She comes from a family who her mom and dad were both in law enforcement. Her mom is now a Fed, and her dad, they divorced. Her dad is a PI, formerly on the force. And then Lucy's on again, off again love interest is named Jack Devlin. He's a U.S. Marshal who's part of this joint supernatural, superpowered crimes task force with the FBI and the U.S. Marshals. So that's kind of Lucy's inroad to all of that, where Jack has some of this tech that can help her from time to time. And, they're a little competitive. I really loved like screwball comedies from the 30s. I shouldn't just limit it to screwball comedies, but like the Thin Man movies, where you've got the banter back and forth between the two leads. That kind of thing came up in the 80s with Moonlighting, or you still see it on, going back to Veronica Mars, the Veronica Logan dynamic that you get in that show. So I wanted to kind of have some character-driven stuff with Lucy and Jack both coming at this stuff from a slightly different perspective. So those are the characters, the main ones. And then there's the whole MacGuffin of the series is there's a superpowered, a non-powered hero who plans for every possible contingency, and he may have saved data for how to take down every bad guy and every other hero on his computer in his massive lair. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
But when that information gets downloaded onto a thumb drive, and this is kind of where the Elmore Leonard influence comes in, everybody wants it. So, you've got the law enforcement, you've got the supervillains, you've got Lucy, everybody chasing this singular MacGuffin, and they're all going to collide. So that's kind of the gist of the story, and that's the driving part. So you've got the characterization stuff, but then you've got the everybody wants this item element. By the way, my elevator pitch is much slower, so you got the rambling version. You got the rambling quarantine version where I haven't talked to many people.
So, how did you meet the you have Ishmael?
Finale.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna butcher his name.
Oh, no problem. I do with regularity. No, Ishmael, I actually met through Action Lab. He's the artist from the first arc that we did on the ongoing series, Athena Volterra and the Sorcerer Pope. So Ishmael was the artist on that. We hit it off really well. And I asked him if he wanted to do a creator-owned book. And I knew that this was, a main source of income for him with the stuff he had done through Action Lab. So I couldn't just offer him 50% ownership in back end. So I had to find a way to be able to pay for it. So that's why we're doing the Kickstarters, so that each issue I can pay Ishmael, and I can pay, for the first arc, it was Roger, our colorist. In the second arc is Maria Gerbau. And she's, I want to be able to pay the team is kind of what it comes.
I'm glad you mentioned her name because I didn't want to butcher that name either.
Truth be told, I've only corresponded with her via email, and if I'm being 100% honest, I did a Google pronunciation, so that because I knew I would be talking to people on Skype and on podcasts, and I didn't want to butcher her name. So, I mean, I'm Americanizing it enough, so that's bad enough.
So this is your fourth Kickstarter. I mean, your first one was the Athena Voltaire, then the second one was the the Undead or Alive, and
Yeah.
so you've had success and not so successful Kickstarters. What have you learned? What have you taken those lessons for this one?
Well, the big thing with the first Kickstarter, I was so unprepared. I mean, we did the Kickstarter for Athena Voltaire and the Volcano Goddess when the platform was like 9 months old. And there's a lot more sharing of information now, and a lot more people who have done it, who can share some information about like good places for resources, like finding out about just simple things like we get the Gemini comic mailers, and they're sized for a comic book, and they're really sturdy and nothing gets beaten up. And so after the first Catch campaign, I bought those in bulk, and just various things like that, so that when we're doing fulfillment, my fiance and I can just kind of take over a big chunk of the basement and set up an assembly line. Getting a stamps.com account, all these things that just didn't occur to me the first time I did it. And the other part of it was when we tried to fund Undead or Alive, the one that didn't make it. Again, I was trying to fund artist Jason Millay, my collaborator on it. He works in advertising, and I asked him what his advertising rate would be to be able to cover the cost of it for the campaign. And even though it was for an OGN, our campaign cost was pretty high. And for a book that nobody is familiar with, we're introducing new characters and stuff like that. I think we targeted a bit too high, and we reached like about half of our goal. So that was a lesson learned, which is why for the Catch, instead of trying to fund the entire graphic novel, I'm doing it issue by issue, and that's frustrating too. So I do appreciate the patience of people who are supporting this, knowing that there's going to be a lag in between issues. But a lot of it is that they're seeing it first, they're seeing the process, and hopefully they can have a sense of pride that they help make something.
So
and
have you
cool rewards?
So have you? And I know that probably not one of the best times to start a Kickstarter.
Yeah, we actually set our target start date of March 23rd. We set it back in November, so but even prior to that, we were saying we wanted to do it sometime in the late winter, early spring. So yeah, it was kind of it felt a little insensitive to launch it, but by the same token, after my first week of self-quarantining, I was getting stir crazy for new entertainment too, and ordered some new books from Amazon and stuff like that. So we decided to go ahead and go with it, not trying to be insensitive to anyone, but we had put a lot of work in to prep it, and we hoped that maybe it might be one of those things where, like me, people were maybe feeling a little bit stir crazy and wanted to have stuff to look forward to.
Right. Well, you're at this time. I'm just looking at it now. You got 12 days to go, and you're 65% funded. So you seem to be doing well.
I hope so. I never know how to look at these things, because the campaign for issue 1. Oh, and thank you, by the way. But the campaign for issue 1, we met our funding goal in like the last hour of the last day, and I really didn't want to do a cardiac, campaign like that again. Um, and you see some other campaigns, all the Comics Tribe stuff overfunds, like within days, or books like White Ash, which are just brilliant. Um, get like a bajillion% of their funding goal in the first hour. So you see some of these books that really um, have their audience locked in and ready to do it, and it can get a little unnerving when you're less than 2 weeks away and you're hoping it's going to stay on target. Um,
Well, it looks like you have, a couple. I'm just looking at it still, and you have, a couple people names that are familiar from the Comic Geek Speak, and I noticed a couple of my, couple artist friends. So looks like you know, I mean, you've, you've obviously done a Kickstarter before. You've fulfilled, the obligations, and so, it's not like people are, taking a shot in the dark.
yeah, I'm trying to get better and trying to get faster with it. It feels like there's always going to be some kind of delay, whether it's a pandemic or sending your book to print at the same time as people are getting stuff printed for New York Comic Con. There's always going to be something. So it's best to just try. We're trying to um, pad the expectations so we can over deliver. So we'd like to have the book done well in advance of what our target date is. So we're taking that into consideration and stuff like that. So hopefully it'll work.
And it looks like you have enough different pledge levels that there's something there for everyone, depending on what they are able to pitch in with.
Yeah, we've obviously got the digital rewards, and again, I still have kind of a hard time personally reconciling. I know it's a lot of money to ask for a single issue, with how Kickstarter shipping and stuff like that works. Um, but these are, obviously a lot more boutique items.
Yeah.
It's not going to make it to Diamond until we do the trade. So these individual issues, the only place you can get them are the Kickstarter campaign, or the non-variant covers I sell at shows, but the variant covers are limited to the campaign. So hopefully that that gives it a quality that people will understand and say, well, this is going to be worth it. But yeah, we've got digital rewards that I think are pretty reasonable, and obviously they're not affected by shipping, all the way up through. We've got like some of the box sets, which are just, when we do some of these things, I try to create a backing level of the kind of stuff that I like, because we all like to have cool stuff on our shelves. So like the box sets with the art from the comic on all the sides, and the box folds out and you get all the variant covers, and like supervillain dossiers, and your own wanted flyer with your face and villain name and stuff like that. And then we've got business cards for Chase Investigations, which is Lucy's thing, Tillman Bail Bonds, which is the guy she works for, and the U.S. Marshals Supernatural Crime Task Force, Jack's business card, and a set of handcuffs with a little catch, branding on it. So I mean, I'm trying to at least get the kinds of things in there that I would look at and kind of giggle about getting if that's if I back the campaign. So hopefully there's a nice blend between affordable and cool shelf stuff.
Well, usually I would ask what conventions you'd be going to, but that's probably up in the air, right?
Oh yeah, oh gee, I applied for ALA, and then American Library Association, and that one got canceled. And I'm at San Diego every year, and I'm still waiting for the cancellation notice on that. on the bright side, I am accruing a ton of PT from my day job. So 2021 is going to be a really good convention year when we have all of this behind us. I want to hit a bunch.
And finally, what are you reading at the moment that stands out for you that you think people should check out?
Um, it's kind of funny you mentioned that because I'm in a little bit of my cleanup mode where I had read like 4 volumes of a series and the final 3 trades came out and stuff like that. So since the beginning of the year, I've been kind of working my way back on series I had started. So some of these may be behind the curve in terms of new stuff for folks. So hopefully it's not boring. But Brian K. Vaughan and Cliff Chang's Paper Girls, wonderful. I loved that. I finished up Thief of Thieves. I know it's essentially a Kirkman book, but I am blanking. Andy Diggle did, the majority of the story arcs, and Sean Martinborough's art was brilliant throughout. So that was great. Seeley and Norton's Revival, I got to finish that up. And then I'm currently working my way through Stumptown with Lazarus in the queue behind it. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun because I've been able to go back and start certain things from the beginning again and just read it in one massive block. So like I said, I know I'm probably behind the curve with stuff that way.
Well, now's the time to catch up on things since new comics aren't going to be going out for who knows how long.
That's true. So what are you reading right now? I'm going to turn it back on you.
No, I'm reading a lot of. I'm a big DC person, so I'm catching up on my Batman. I'm catching up on trying to work my way through the Wonder Twins, the new imprint stuff like Dial H and all that stuff. So I'm really enjoying those. So, but I when I have time, I try to find time to read. But lately, I've been doing a lot of reading of back issues because I've started writing lists for comic book resources. So as I'm putting those together, I go back and make sure I'm referencing the correct stuff and all that.
Oh no, that would be cool.
So the last I just finished up a list about the Joker stories to read. So it was a lot of finding cool Joker stories that aren't Killing Joke, Death in the Family, Dark Knight Returns.
I would hope the Joker Fish story from Englehart.
It made it. Yeah.
Okay, good.
It made it.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm showing my age again with that, but that was, that's my era of Batman. Well, and the whole Doug Munch period in the early '80s was really great. I don't know if you've read any of those. I don't even know if they're in trades anymore.
Well, I'm trying to think. My Batman run starts at 400 and goes forward. I have a few issues before then, so but all my comics are in the storage unit, so they're not easily accessible.
We're in a golden age of reprints, though, so I realized a lot of like my '80s comics that I had sold off are available in beautiful omnibus editions. So I've got to track down like the Simonson Thor omnibus because I sold off all my individual issues and was just jonesing for some Simonson. And the Miller Daredevil stuff, I sold off all those. So yeah, I'm kind of with you where with like going back and checking some of these things, but I'm embracing trades and collections just because it's easier for me to keep track of.
Yep. So that's what I'm kind of trying to keep up with. So,
cool.
Like I said, I'm more of a DC person, and I'll dabble in Marvel because I have friends that read Marvel. So I tried getting into the new X-Men, but then they released like 5 zillion books.
Yeah, um, that's one thing that I can sometimes be frustrating with. Uh, Shared universes can be really cool in that storylines from one book can pick up from another one, but sometimes, uh, again, some of the arcs that I like the most are slightly more um, auteur driven.
Mhm.
So, like the Miller Daredevil stuff was not dependent upon large corporate events or anything like that. So I kind of miss the days of mainstream comic universes only being marginally tied together rather than so event driven. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But that's also just me being an old guy.
Well, I'm kind of old, so. Well, it was great talking to you again, and
And you
best
as
of luck
well.
on the Kickstarter.
Thank you so much.
And if you need, I'll put this out and I'll make sure I tag you in it and share it around. And
Please.
yeah, and if you need anything, to help you get a final push, then let me know and I'll do what I can.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much. Oh, and can I throw in one other plug?
Anything.
Awesome. I'm doing a weekly webcomic again. That's actually how Athena Voltaire had launched.
Okay.
And it's 1980s
Yeah.
post-apocalyptic stuff. It's called Maximus Rex, and the kind of the tagline for it is "The world ended in 1989. Welcome to the after party." So it kind of posits the idea that in this post-apocalyptic world, everyone's holding on to the last vestiges of civilization and culture, the 1980s. So there's mullets and leopard print spandex in neon colors. It's played straight, but I feel like it has a lot of the fun tropes of the genre. So it's MaximusWrecks.com, Maximus Rex, and it updates every Tuesday.
All right. Well, just send me the link and I'll make sure to put it in at the end of the interview.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Well, stay safe, stay healthy. Try not to get too bored in quarantine.
I'll just make more comics. But yeah, you stay healthy out there and stay safe. It's crazy, and we'll all weather the storm of this and be hopefully chatting with everybody in real life at conventions next year.
Yeah. Well, I've only been out of the neighborhood once in the past 3 weeks,
Wow.
and that was to take a drive with the family.
Now we do walks, but we practice all the rules about social distancing. We had been going to the grocery store, but we did switch to delivery, and of course that's a weird thing too, because then you're asking someone else to put themselves at risk.
Yeah.
So
It's
it's
weird.
yeah, there's no script for this.
But yeah, most of my time is spent chasing when I'm not working or after I work, it's spent chasing my 3.5-year-old around the block on his new bike. So
Oh boy, already riding a bike at 3.5?
yeah, right
Wow.
else, but
Still, that's awesome. I
well,
think I was overly protective of mine, so it took a while before we did bike stuff.
I better lose weight during this quarantine.
I can relate. I'm
All
trying.
righty. Well, thank you very much, and I'll let you know when this is up.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Take
Yep.
care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.